We are live at the opening Sports 360 AZ. I'm Jordan Ham alongside Scout National Director of Recruiting Brandon Huffman, and I wanted to talk some Pac-12 storylines. And it seems like UCLA has a pretty good pass rush coming their way next year.
Yeah, they have Hunter Echols, who led his section in sacks last year from Los Angeles Cathedral High School, as well as Jalen Phillips, who's a five-star. He's the #1 defensive end out west, the #3 defensive end nationally, picked UCLA over Stanford and about 30 other schools, and has actually had a really good week. Now, when he's not going against Foster Sarl, who's the #1 tackle in the country, he's been outstanding. Those two had some spirited battles today, but that's not a bad 1-2 punch at defensive end to get Hunter Echols and Jalen Phillips, the top two defensive ends in the West in the 2017 class.
And Chris Peterson has done quite a good job getting a few of these guys on this field right now as well.
Yeah, in fact, this is their biggest group of guys committed at this point. They have Hunter Bryant, who's the #2 tight end out west, #3 tight end nationally, from Eastside Catholic. That's 2 years in a row they've gotten the best player at Eastside Catholic, getting Brandon Wellington a year ago. He's had a terrific, he's been here, in fact, the whole week, catching passes the Elite 11 portion. He's been really good these last 2 days in 7-on-7. Connor Weddington, who was the MVP at the Seattle opening. He's played safety. He's a 4-star. Could play running back. He could play corner. Could play safety. He's been playing safety out here. Is doing well. And then Marlon Tuipulotu, who's actually from Oregon, Central Oregon. He was in the final 5 today for the defensive lineman. He's probably the most consistent defensive tackle this week. And when he committed to UW in April, that surprised a lot of people. Michigan, Notre Dame were after him heavily. He's originally from LA, so SC and UCLA thought they were going to get him. And then out of the blue, he picked Washington. So that's a pretty good start for Chris Peterson in this class.
Jordan Ham alongside Brandon Huffman. Now talking Stanford. They have a couple big-time commits. Davis Mills, the quarterback, Colby Parkinson, the tight end. And usually that mix works pretty well for the Cardinal when they're able to grab a signal caller and a big-time tight end.
Yeah, you know, most schools would say, hey, if I can give you 3 guys on offense, what would you want? A big-time quarterback, a big-time running back, and a big-time receiver. Except at Stanford, they want a big-time quarterback, a big-time tight end, and a big-time left tackle. Well, they got the quarterback in Davis Mills, they got the tight end, Colby Parkinson, and they may get 2 big-time tackles with Foster Sarl and Walker Little. Colby Parkinson, in my opinion, is the #1 tight end in the country. We have a #1 out west, #2 nationally. Very good chance he moves up to #1. It's kind of like if you took all the best attributes of the last 5 or 6 Stanford tight ends, said we want this guy's hands, this guy's speed, this guy's strength, this guy's athleticism. Let's put it into a lab, and what kind of tight end could we have pop out? It would be Parkinson. Davis Mills, again, I don't want to make major comparisons here because it's a lot of times unfair, but he's the closest thing to Andrew Luck that I've seen in the high school ranks going to college these last couple years. He's our #2 quarterback nationally, has a chance to be our #1 guy. That's a very, very good 1-2 punch for Stanford. And then if you can get Foster Sarl and you can get Walker Little, Foster Sarl is the #1 tackle in the country. He's been outstanding this week, been dominant. They could get him to go with Walker Little. David Shaw continues to show, hey, count me out all you want. I'm just going to keep recruiting, and that machine's just going to keep going.
We're still pretty early in the recruiting process. There's still plenty of commitments to happen. Who do you think from this group could go the Pac-12's way?
Well, I think Foster Sarl is a guy that, when it's all said and done, he's going to go to the Pac-12. Now, will it be to Stanford, where a lot of people think he's headed? Will he stay home and go to Washington? He is mentioning Notre Dame prominently, but I just don't see him leaving the West Coast. You could also have Elijah Molden, we know is going to the Pac-12 because his Final Four were Stanford, Oregon, Washington, and USC. I think it's really more a Stanford and Oregon battle. His father played at Oregon, was a first-round draft pick out of Oregon, but Stanford is that school that continues to break up family legacies, if you will, because families seem to like their kids to go to Stanford. So with Elijah Molden, we know he's headed to the Pac-12. Those would be the 2 that I would say are probably the most likely. But then you have Jack Sears, who his Final Four includes Utah, USC, and UCLA, but Duke's in there. And David Cluckett's got a great reputation as a quarterback guru, so they could shock the world and get him. I've been saying all along, though, I think it's an LA battle for Jack Sears, and I still think he's going to go to one of the LA schools. My money right now would be on UCLA, but when Duke's in there with those Final Four, sometimes you look like the old Sesame Street. One of these schools is not like the other. That could be the school that ends up pulling the surprise.
There you have it. Great insight from Scout.com's Brandon Huffman. For all coverage regarding the opening, make sure to keep it to Sports 360 AZ.